Here's everything you need to know about how to use chalk paint on furniture. Number 1, clean your piece well and possibly sand. For now, you'll want to make sure to clean your entire piece using TSP Substitute or Crud Cutter. This removes any dirt or oils or anything else on the surface. Spray the cleaner onto your piece, use the scouring side of a sponge, and clean it off well. Then use a wet towel to kind of rinse it, and then use a dry towel to dry it completely. When using chalk paint, you really don't need to sand. The only time you would need to is if you have scratches or imperfections in your piece that you want to try to smooth out. In my case, I had stenciled the top of this, so I needed to sand that out so the raised edges of that extra paint weren't showing. Use 220 grit sandpaper to lightly sand out any of those imperfections. Wipe off the sanding dust with a tack cloth or a damp cotton towel, and you're ready to start painting. No matter what, chalk paint will give some texture to your piece of furniture, but you can use different types of brushes to kind of change up the texture you'll get. A round brush will create a lot more texture in your paint. Usually you can use like a crosshatch painting technique to give that extra texture. If you paint with a round brush up and down, it really doesn't work well. If you want a smoother finish, you can use a flat brush, and chalk paint does paint fairly smoothly with that flat brush. You can see the difference in the paint on each side after one coat. Number 3, when using chalk paint or any type of paint, but especially chalk paint, you want to keep a wet edge. Chalk paint dries really quickly, definitely more quickly than any other type of furniture paint. So you want to make sure that you're always brushing on a wet edge. If you brush over paint that has started to dry, your brush is going to drag through the paint and it's going to create brush strokes, even more brush strokes than you normally would get with chalk paint. To do this, just work in small sections. So kind of paint a part at a time, whether that be a drawer front or a tabletop, or the side to a dresser or the top of a dresser. And then make sure you're just checking for drips at all the corners after you finish a side. Chalk paint works beautifully for layering different colors of paint. The only other paint I've ever found that this works with is milk paint, but chalk paint is probably my favorite to use this technique on. To do this, let your first coat of paint dry and then lightly spray water over the surface. Use a second color of paint and get just a little bit of paint on your brush. I usually dab off extra paint onto another surface when I'm doing this, and then brush it over your piece. You can put more paint in certain areas. This is kind of a trial and error type process. Let that coat of paint dry and then repeat the process by spraying a light coat of water, using another color, or you could go back to your first color and use a small amount of paint to brush it on. You can use a dry brush to pull off some of that excess paint as well and sort of just blend everything together until you get a look that you like. Here's what this table looked like after I added one more layer of the first color, which was that dark olive color. Finally, we're going to apply a top coat, which is the last step that's needed when you're using chalk paint. Chalk paint is porous and water will get on it or other things will get on it and penetrate the paint if you don't add a top coat. The two main options are a wax or a water-based acrylic top coat. To apply the water-based top coat, you'll just use a brush and brush it on, keeping a wet edge to try and avoid brush marks. This stuff levels well though, so usually it dries super flat. To apply the furniture wax, you'll add a teeny bit of wax to the tip of your brush and brush it on, usually in circles. A little bit goes a long way here, and then let it dry before buffing it out to a slight sheen. When comparing the top coats side by side, you can see they finish very similarly. The wax does darken the paint slightly. It'll bring out a little bit of a richer color than any type of water-based finish. If you're looking for a shinier top coat, I honestly probably wouldn't use chalk paint. I find it really only looks good under these lower sheens. If you go higher like satin or gloss, it just doesn't look that great. For this table, I ended up using the clear water-based top coat in that flat finish for the whole piece. All in all, chalk paint is easy to use, and with all the different brands that make it now, there's so many different options and price points that make it affordable as well. I find myself using chalk paint on smaller projects and not as much on big pieces of furniture, but it is a great option for really just about anything.